Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to our special WonderCon panel on the recently released graphic novel Dark Agents. During this challenging time, many of us might be struggling, whether it is economically, physically, or emotionally. We hope that this panel discussion will be helpful in supporting you during this during this difficult time. My name is Dustin McGinnis. I'm a musician, podcaster, and all-around fanboy, and I host two podcasts with the lovely Dr. Janina Scarlet, a superhero therapy podcast and Harry Potter therapy podcast. At this time, I'm going to ask our panelists to please introduce themselves and let our viewers know where they can find them on social media. And we'll go ahead and start with you, Chase.
Thanks so much. And I'm excited to be here. My name is Chase Masterson. I'm an actor, and I founded Pop Culture Hero Coalition. You can find me at Chase Masterson or the Coalition at Superhero IRL.
Hi, I'm Dr. Harpreet Malla, and I am a clinical psychologist who focuses on intergenerational work and identity building, but also, of course, incorporate pop culture elements into my work as well.
I'm Dr. Janina Scarlet. I'm a clinical psychologist, author, and the full-time geek. I am the author of Dark Agents, which Vinny illustrated, and it is something I'm just extremely honored to be here to talk about today.
Hi, I'm Vince Alvendia. Everybody calls me Vinny. I'm the illustrator of Dark Agents, and I'm a local San Diego indie freelance illustrator and a comic artist. And you can find me at eggdropramen.studio, and all of my social media is at eggdropramen.
So during this truly unprecedented time, I should just say, many people are turning towards our fiction as an emotional support. So why do you think people turning to these fictional things, whether it be TV shows or fiction, in this case being Dark Agents, why do you think they're turning to these things during this time?
Well, to just jump right in, I would say one of the main reasons, right, is when a situation becomes difficult or tense, people look for a little bit of escapism. And of course, why not escape into a beautiful fantasy world, fall in love with characters, right? If you can't have anyone over, you can invite your favorite book characters over, and then also just kind of dive into something where something beautiful is happening. So I think that discovering other worlds is a really huge part of this.
Absolutely. And I think to add to that is a lot of times when we go through something horrific, we might not know how to understand this. We might not know how to make sense of it. We don't have the vocabulary to talk about this. What's going on right now is truly unprecedented. I think none of us in our lifetimes anyway have ever lived through a pandemic before, and watching a television show, for example, or reading a book where some kind of a worldwide catastrophe or tragedy is happening can make it easier on us to understand that we're not alone, that the situation is complicated, and can allow us to better understand what we're going through, and also to explain to other people what we're experiencing.
Feeling not alone is such an important thing right now, because a lot of us are physically alone. And Janina, as you say so beautifully in Dark Agents, we're not alone when we experience trauma. There are people who have gone before and been through horrible things that have come out the other side. And in this book, this was the book that more than anything in my life that I could see myself in and relate and go, oh my gosh, it's validation. She's me. I'm not alone. I'm not strange. The things going through my head aren't crazy or excessive. And that knowledge is so important. It takes the victim blaming off ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Most definitely. So Vince and Dr. Scarlet, can you please talk about Dark Agents, the graphic novel, and what you're hoping it will do to help people who are struggling with trauma?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So Dark Agents is a graphic novel about Violet, a witch with PTSD who had experienced a really traumatic loss at a young age. And to cope with this loss, she joins Hades's underworld intelligence agency to become a dark agent, which is a kind of monster hunter. It's a kind of person that keeps a peace, kind of balance between the underworld and the world of the living. But in order to face some kind of supernatural monsters, she also has to come face to face with her own trauma. Throughout the series, there are going to be 8 graphic novels, each from the point of view of a different character in the series, each exploring a different type of a mental health difficulty. So in the first graphic novel, we learn about what PTSD feels like from Violet's perspective, and in the future novels, we'll find out, for example, what OCD feels like from another character's perspective, and what depression feels like from another character's perspective. But through it all, we'll still see these same characters too. But even if we're not exploring the world from Violet's perspective anymore, for instance, just by having been in her shoes, my hope is that we'll be able to understand what she's going through and empathize with her. So my goal with the series is to build an understanding about mental health with the readers, to help readers of all ages understand what different kind of mental health disorders are, whether they experience them or not, and build a sense of empathy to destigmatize mental health.
Yep. Ditto. No, I'm just kidding. Just to add a little to that, you know, Dr. Scarlet's writing is excellent. Her narrative is excellent, and it's really easy to get lost in the story and be entertained by, you know, what the characters are going through and experiencing the plot. And as I like to say a lot, what I hope is you might be learning something without even thinking about it. You could be passively learning or learning against your will, for lack of a better term. You know, as you go through this adventure with the characters and experience what they're experiencing and relating to them. You know, I've seen a couple of people that have read the book saying that they're finding themselves in situations where they're thinking like, oh, you know, how would Violet think through this, or how would this character, or whatever their favorite character in the story is thinking through this. And I think that's really awesome that they can relate such a fantastic story to their real life experiences.
Mm-hmm. So this next question is for Chase and Dr. Malla. You've both read Dark Agents, and how do you think it can be helpful for our readers, and why do we so often turn to fiction when we are struggling?
I think one of the main pieces is that each character, while they have their sort of kryptonite or Achilles heel moments, they also display this beautiful resiliency and vulnerability. And I think those are the things that help us heal. Those are the things that help us connect. And so I think that is one of the most beautiful messages in the first one so far. And I'm sure that that will continue on through the series, because each character is facing something different, but they, you know, their willingness to be vulnerable, their willingness to be open and kind of speak about their experience or have someone view things through their lens, I think, is what actually helps them get through it. I think that's also why the readership turns, right, to anything that kind of they can connect to or they can see themselves in or find themselves in. I know Chase did a great job of mentioning that earlier, right? That moment where you're like, oh, that's me, or like, I've had that moment, I've totally thought that before. And so I think that that's what readers are hungry for and looking for, are moments to kind of find themselves, and then also see that characters who struggle maybe in ways that they do still make it, still succeed, still have so much to offer.
Yeah. There's such a relatability to this book. I was reading it again this morning, and one of the things I had really not noticed as much the first time was early in the book, Violet's mom says, you can't go outside. You can't go to school. Everything out there is dangerous. Do you understand? And that's a lot of the feeling that a lot of us have, that all of us have right now. And so that really spoke to me. But overall, the characters are so relatable, and they are so vulnerable and so human. And Janina, you've done such a beautiful job with that. Just, they're so accessible. We feel like we know them and we're rooting for them throughout. And that is because they have such flaws that we see readily. In the first few pages, it just looks like a ragtag bunch of misfits, of people who would never be someone you would consider to be an agent of any kind. And Hades says, "This all you got?" And Professor Dante says, they all have overcome something. They all have something to fight for. In my 4,000 years of experience at this agency, it's my experience that the best agents have these qualities. And that is something that we all have the ability to be, to work through our dark places and to become in touch with our superpowers of resilience and empathy. And it's really, I think, all of our great hope. There is instilled within all of us a desire to overcome and to help other people overcome. And so it's a dream, a good dream, when we see these characters that are so broken, that have every reason not to succeed, overcome their difficulties and fight with all their hearts, partly by, as Janina says, embracing the dark and getting in touch with their past, with their traumas. It's a very difficult thing to do, but we've all had some kind of trauma, and most of us, and it's refreshing and hopeful to think that there are ways out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, sorry, if I could add to that, just speaking about rereading the book, because I reread it as well, just because I think when I was illustrating it, I didn't really, I was kind of taking it scene by scene, but I didn't really just kind of read it, and what struck me as well, and I'm glad you said that, because it sprung to my mind. I wanted to mention that it's kind of an immigrant story too, in a way, because of Violet's journey to the underworld, how she's not familiar with anything. She's lost. She doesn't know who to trust. And, as a child, I came over from the Philippines to the US. And, I spent my first year of school in the Philippines, and it's such a different, culture and structure from there to the US, system. And it reminded me of my first day at school in the US, where I didn't know the hallways. I didn't know the people. I was dressed funny because I was, I had my shirt tucked in and I was wearing these weird shorts and dress shoes, So I was definitely sticking out like a sore thumb. And it finally dawned on me rereading it, why that particular part of the book really spoke to me. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is what I went through when I first came to the US as a kid.
thank you for bringing that up, because for me, writing the story, like my heart is in this book. And I, as a child, I grew up in Ukraine, and my family and I were exposed to Chernobyl radiation, as was everyone living in Ukraine at that time. And although for the first week and a half, none of us knew what was going on, and we were going outside and unfortunately getting more exposed, once the news leaked about what happened, we were required to be indoors, and we had to not go outside, and we had to not necessarily physically isolate the way that we're doing right now during the pandemic, but we couldn't go outside because outside was dangerous. And it's so interesting now seeing some of the parallels between like what happened after the Chernobyl disaster and what's happening right now in the pandemic, to where same thing, kind of like going outside is dangerous. And I'm so glad you brought that up, Chase, and thank you for talking about that scene.
Mm-hmm. Well, Chase mentioned that there was a ragtag bunch of characters that was developed in this story. And I'm just curious, which one is your favorites, like each of your favorite?
Well, I have to say Karuna. I'm actually dressed as her now, with the blue and black. So I, first of all, think representation really matters. So seeing a South Asian descent character just be a fierce, beautiful, compassionate, warm person is really, really wonderful. And I think we need more of that in the world. But I think also just seeing someone represented who, who looks like me or who I can cosplay as, is huge. And so absolutely Karuna. Yeah.
Do we have to pick one? There's so many. I love Violet. I just love her because she is so fierce and she is never giving up. And she has got her mission, and she is not going to take no for an answer. Despite her fear, despite her trauma, her brokenness, she is committed to her mission, which is, well, I don't want to give anything away, but she will go to any length. And I think sometimes that is the way that we need to hold on to our healing. And I've learned that sometimes it is those things that we cannot even begin to imagine ourselves doing that brings us the farthest, and that are actually not as difficult. Thank you, Janina. Not as difficult as you might think, maybe in the moment, but afterward, you know you're a badass. You've grown because you've gone into single-handed combat with that grief or depression or anxiety or fear, and you may not have completely come out unscathed, but you've done it, you've faced it, and the next time you can do it again. So I love Violet. Can I have one more though, please?
Yeah, of course.
I love Sunny.
Me too.
Sunny so much because he's huge and he could hurt everyone, but he has the most gentle heart. And it's not because he was born that way. It's because he has been through enough to have learned that he can be gentle. He can be mindful and gentle and be who he wants instead of who he was socialized to be. And we all have people in our hearts and in our pasts that have affected us deeply and caused us to think and feel things that maybe we don't want to think and feel, like Sunny. He realizes that he is not the sum of his mistakes, and we are not the sum of our mistakes. And I just love his vulnerability and how hard he tries all the time to get in touch with who he knows he really is, which is gentle.
It's funny. I love going after you, Chase, because you kind of touch upon everything I want to say.
Sorry, sorry. There's so much more.
No, it's excellent because you articulated everything that I love about Sunny, and it's really true because first of all, I love a redemption story. Dustin and I have talked about this, offhand, but I love a good redemption story, and I love the big, scary-looking guy, but there's a teddy bear inside. But you brought up an excellent point, because I can relate to it personally. Like you said, you don't have to be the sum of your past mistakes. I can be very frank and be very honest that I'm a much different person now today than I was when I was a teenager or even in my 20s. Sure. And you can say it was a product of the times or the environment, but I've kind of learned, because I used to have anxiety, waking up at night and being like, man, I was really kind of a jerk in my younger life, especially in high school, in my early 20s. I was like kind of the walking epitome of toxic masculinity, where I was really afraid to show myself as vulnerable because I didn't want to show any kind of weakness, because on top of that, I had kind of a Napoleonic complex, so I had all these things kind of working against me. And it's really just super recently that I've learned to kind of accept that I don't have to worry about that because I'm being the best person I can be right now at this moment. And Sunny kind of reflects that. He does hint at it, but you can see that. And what I love is he's not there yet. You see that he still has that little bit of a struggle, which is so relatable because I feel myself kind of slipping into those things every now and then. And it's kind of like, oh, wait, hey, man, snap out of it. But so yeah, if you couldn't tell, Sunny's my favorite. But I'm happy. Karuna's introduction to Violet was one of my favorite things to draw. I love that interaction, that kind of semi-suspicion. Like, who is this? Who's this person? Why are you in my space? Like,
let's have cookies.
I love drawing that. It was really hilarious. So, yeah.
I feel like these are, I don't know, it's hard for me. I feel like I'm biased in talking about these characters, but one of my favorite characters is actually not one of the students, but actually one of the professors. So my favorite character is Hera. Not a lot of people know this. A lot of people know that in Greek mythology, Hera was married to Zeus, but not a lot of people know Hera's story. And Hera's story is that not only was she Zeus's sister, but she was tricked by him and sexually assaulted by him and forced to marry him, as he then abused and tortured her and had multiple affairs. And Hera is actually the goddess of marriage and the goddess of relationships and love, and not a lot of people know that. But because I love her so much, this is Hera the cat right here. And so in the graphic novel, I wanted to show that Hera is now an independent woman. She has left Zeus. They're separated. She is a career woman. She is now a marriage and family therapist, and she is helping other people to move past their own traumatic experiences because she knows what it's like. And that's why there's a scene between her and Violet where Hera recognizes when Violet gets triggered, and she lets her know, I know what that's like. I know what it's like to be triggered. I know what it's like when things happen against my will. And that's why I do what I do. And so I really wanted to highlight the importance of giving women voices, giving women a voice, especially people who survived sexual assault, who were then demonized for being seen as wrathful or jealous, whereas, you know, Hera's actual story is that she was abused and assaulted and didn't really get a voice of her own.
So we're kind of existing in this really strange time right now. And this question is for the psychologists. Dr. Scarlet and Dr. Malla, what can people do if they are feeling overwhelmed during this time?
Yeah, there are several things. I think first and foremost, please reach out. Physically distancing does not actually mean social distancing, right? I think there's an important distinction there. So Zoom calls with friends, or I know there's like Jackbox and House Party and Netflix Play. There's so many unique opportunities to connect right now, or also reconnect, right? Friends that you haven't talked to in a while, just simply checking in. Another major thing, I think, especially for me personally, has been limiting your intake of news, right? So I think we can so easily be inundated by everything that's going on right now. It is absolutely overwhelming. So I think just taking the time to set a little cutoff point, or having like sort of a, you know, like a little appointment almost to check the news. If that's once a day for a little bit, or if that's once a week, even better. There's not a lot of new information coming out right now. So I think once you're informed and you're staying safe, the most important thing is to protect your mental health as well. So I would say those are the two major points.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I think one thing that a lot of people might not realize is that we're all very empathic beings, at least people who are capable of empathy, and that's 99.9% of the human population. And so reading other people's trauma stories can cause a degree of trauma or vicarious grief in us as well. It might remind us of our own trauma and grief experiences too. And so that's where recognizing that we are suffering, and even having the recognition of I'm going through a hard time too, and I'm allowed to grieve, I'm allowed to struggle, and what I need right now is to step away, can go a really long way. There are two questions that I think we should be asking ourselves, not just once a day, but several times throughout the day. And one is, what am I going through right now? What am I feeling, right? So am I feeling grief, overwhelmed? Am I feeling lonely or tired, or or hungry? And the second question is, what do I need right now? How can I support myself? Because now more than ever, at least in our lifetimes, we need to not only figuratively, but also literally put on our own mask first, so that we are safe enough to then protect and support other people. Right. And so that means that noticing our own triggers, our own mental health, and as Dr. Malla mentioned, it's, limiting the news, and also really promoting activities that bring us joy, and, such as connecting with loved ones, maybe even dancing around the kitchen, maybe playing with our pets, maybe coloring just for fun. And it's okay if we're less productive than normal, because what's going on right now is not normal. There's a pandemic going on. So it's okay if we don't finish all the dishes. It's okay if we don't finish all our homework, the important thing is, first and foremost, attending to our mental health. And then second of all, doing something that we find meaningful. What we know in PTSD literature and research is that although many of us will be experiencing trauma right now, the possibility of us getting PTSD can be deterred or can be lowered. The risk can be lowered if we're doing something that is meaningful to us, if we're helping other people, if we're doing something creative, if we're doing something that that is close to our heart. And so time and time again in history, after 9/11, after Sri Lanka, we've seen the same kind of thing where people exposed to trauma might have different rates of PTSD. And those rates of PTSD are dependent upon how much or how little connection and meaningful activities people engage in. And so very much as other people here have said, take care of yourself and also reach out and do something that is meaningful. You don't have to leave your house to do that. Doing a video, talking about your experiences, or writing or reaching out to a friend can go a really long way of you creating a sense of community and supporting other people, and then also supporting your mental health.
I'm happy to also chime in a little bit more. I love that Dr. Scarlett said you do not have to be productive at this time. I know it can be easy for people to sort of, this is a great time for me to, learn guitar, Spanish, or whatever's going on. And I think those are wonderful goals, right? Structure is really nice for us, but structure does not have to mean simply productivity. So I know my partner and I, we bought a bunch of scratch arts. I don't know if anyone remembers those from way back when, but there's like the little rainbow thing underneath.
So pretty.
Scratch and draw, and I think that is so soothing and so easy. It doesn't have to be good, right? But you can do things for fun for your mental health. Also, of course, as mental health clinicians, I think a huge thing right now is, if you've ever considered therapy, if you've ever thought about actually seeking treatment yourself, now is a great time. There's so many providers offering telehealth. It is very easy to connect. It is very easy to reach out. So please, if you are considering doing that, go for it. Take the leap. It will be worth it. It will help support you. And, if Dark Agents has no other message, I think it is that reaching out and needing help is not a bad thing. It is a human thing.
We're just talking about the Dark Agents messages that are underneath there and everything. So this question is for all of you. What are some of the things we learn from Dark Agents about how to cope with trauma, and how can we utilize these skills in real life?
I think we've touched on a lot of them, right? So resiliency, connection, sort of accepting that we are all imperfect in ways, and that's what makes us strong and unique and wonderful. Yeah, so those are some of the major themes. I'm trying to think. So many things though, and I think so many more as the story unfolds. So maybe I'll let Dr. Scarlett chime in here. She knows some insider knowledge.
I think one of the biggest things I wanted to highlight in this book is that although some people mistakenly see it as a weakness, but I see it as our greatest strength. Being able to share our trauma story and sharing it more than once can be incredibly healing for us, because it allows us to better process what happened. Trauma is almost like food poisoning. We have to process it to get it out of our system. Otherwise, it sits there like poison. And so to be able to share what we went through, and instead of running away from our triggers, learning over time to face them with the support of a friend or a mental health professional can go a really long way. And as Dr. Malla mentioned, many mental health professionals, most right now, are offering telehealth, where you can see a therapist on Zoom or on Skype or over the phone, and usually on a statewide level. So even if you live in a different city from a therapist you would like to see, you might still be able to work with that individual so long as they're licensed in the state that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful stuff.
Oh, go ahead, Chase.
Thank you. I was just going to say, I love that Hera gives Violet a book called Battling Your Inner Demons. If you want to save the world, you need to start with yourself. And it's so appropriate for Violet at that time because she's got this mission. And it's appropriate for us in every area. If you want to do anything, you need to start with yourself. If you want to have a good relationship, if you want to have a good circle of friends, if you want to succeed in your work even, it, all of our mental health issues are extremely key, and getting healthy is extremely key to every area of our lives. I loved it when Professor Dante said, most problems we have with agents most problems we have from agents stem from unresolved psychological issues. If we don't deal with them in training, they will come out in the field.
Mm-hmm.
And how many of us have been upset for a reason that we don't understand, and we realize it's something that we haven't resolved, and it's just coming out at that time. And it happens across the board in a lot of different ways. Another thing that I think is extremely important, if I can just say, separating what are facts and what are feelings, what is the absolute truth about us, and what are the thoughts and feelings that we get barraged with. The sarcophagus battling everyone in their minds and saying these things, in their minds and hearts, like, you're ugly, you're stupid, you're worthless, you don't have a chance, how could you have said that, why did you do that, you don't belong here, all of that imposter syndrome that we all face.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding that those are not facts, that those are thoughts, and that they can seep into your feelings, but that you can counteract that with mindfulness. It's beautiful what you did, Janina, seeing these characters go through that and employ mindfulness and win against it and heal. It's beautiful.
I think also, coming to a sense of self-acceptance and self-compassion. So I think we've been using a lot of little psych terms throughout this panel, and it feels so normalized and so part of our world because it is. And so I think that that's just one of the beautiful things that Dark Agents gives us, right? Is looking through things that you probably already knew, some things that you were doing, but with a lens of mental health, right? Being able to view it as, oh, okay, this is overcoming trauma. This was a trigger. This was what was going on here. And so I think that that's so, so cool to be able to, use as a clinician, and also just kind of learn and discover on your own. I think that's a beautiful journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's necessarily a lesson taken away, but there's a lot of instances of people, or I should say characters, of just being friends. I won't say, because I feel like some of them might ruin, certain points of the story that are kind of important, but there are a lot of instances of the agents supporting each other, whether it's overtly with a fist bump, or just listening to somebody, and hearing, and just being willing to listen to what they're going through or what they've been through. There's a lot of that in this book, which I love. And especially in this time with all the conventions being canceled, and I have a lot of fellow independent artists that make their livings off of the circuit, and they're really kind of in a bind right now financially, because this is how they make their living. And for me, that kind of, my way of being a friend is, and supporting them, other than throwing money at them because they make awesome work, but just spreading the word and making people aware of all these fantastic artists out there that really need support now more than ever because of what's going on. And there's a lot of that in Dark Agents, and it's not in your face and overt. It's kind of just, again, it's a testament to Janina's writing, because you don't realize it until after the fact, and you've absorbed it and you think about it.
Mm-hmm. So Chase had mentioned earlier this powerful motto that's used within this graphic novel, which is embrace the dark. And then there's the second part, which is guard the light. What does this motto mean to each of you?
I'll start us off. Yeah. So I think one of the most beautiful pieces in there is embrace the dark, because I think that that is the side that, unfortunately, as a society, we are often taught in different ways or socialized in different ways to hide and to deny within ourselves. And so I think it can be so difficult to practice that kind of self acceptance, right? Or to say, so even that automatic, right? Like, oh, hey, how are you doing? Even now during this pandemic, which obviously is impacting us all, people will just kind of, oh, good. And it's like, what kind of good, right? Like good, but a little tired, feeling, doing okay or surviving, but a little overwhelmed. And I think that even a small change like that, right, is working towards acceptance and really having that within us. And then, of course, the other part of that is guarding the light. So we all have things that make us happy. We all have things that re-energize or recharge us. And so I think it's not forgetting those, right? Being able to hold both of those things together at the same time, and being able to not forget what makes us happy or what coping is helpful to us, what beauty there still is in the world, right? Even now during the pandemic, right? You can think about everything that's to come ahead. And of course, there's utility in that. But do not forget to, remember your friends outside, remember your life, your identity, the things that make you feel alive. Just being able to hold both.
Yeah, that's so lovely. You know, when I was writing this, my intention for this motto was to essentially have us embrace that darkness, embrace whether it's the depression, the trauma, the pain, and then to guard the things that are meaningful to us, the things that bring us joy. And actually, the whole title of the series, Dark Agents, my intention was to show that these folks are agents of the darkness, where they represent mental health in a sense, right? Like it was a metaphor, like, or that they speak out for the dark, but they create a sense of balance between the underworld and the world of the living by reminding us to both embrace some of these dark parts of ourselves and also guard the really meaningful, joyful parts of ourselves, including love and connection.
Yeah, I think just I guess on a more personal level, as it applies to like Sunny's character, embracing the dark of his past, and not it's not like you have to forget what you did, but owning up to it, being accountable for it, and then guarding the light as literally him being the better person, his path to being the better Sunny, and constantly working towards that, and not letting his guard down, so to speak, to fall back into that dark place. So I think it's all about acknowledging, your past, the good and the bad, and moving forward from that towards the light, I guess. That's my take.
Yeah. In terms of the dark and the light, I just want to read another thing that is a line of Janina's. It's so beautiful. I forget who says it, but your fear, your thoughts, your pounding heart, all of your symptoms are your call to find your strength so that you can find strength for others. And so that we can find it for ourselves too, of course. But all of those things, all of that dark is really scary, obviously. And we, as a society, are often taught, well, just think about the positive, don't focus on it, move on. And those things are very well meant when someone says that to you. People don't want you to get stuck. And yet, if we don't embrace the dark, if we don't have connection with the very hard things that have happened with us and work through them, it's like going through the fire. It's going to feel like it's burning you, but the only other choice is to die of smoke inhalation. And so you really have the choice to face your pain, because it's going to come on to you, like we were talking about, like Professor Dante said, unresolved pain will eat away at you. And that's what embracing the dark has meant to me. I haven't always been good at it, but I see how important it is and how it really does help. As scary as it is, it does get better. And then guarding the light is you. The light is, you know, your future and your heart and the time you have on this planet, your friendships and the good that is in you waiting to be able to bestow itself on the world. The good is the good things that are going to happen, the fun things, all of those things we have to guard safely.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we don't, it is too easy to let our past creep up on us and get us. And that includes self-condemnation, like these characters have gone through. You know, you're not good enough, you're not able to do this, you'll never be a dark, you know, all of those things, that those voices that we hear, all of us. And when I've said those things, Janina's a dear friend. When I've said those things to Janina, she always says to me, don't talk that way about my friend. And it's, you know, would you talk that way about one of your friends? Well, then don't talk that way about yourself. And that's guarding the light. And I'm so grateful for you and that message of yours, Janina. It's incredibly powerful and so powerful in this book.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just seeing all you guys smiling and hearing all this, I want to give you a hug.
Virtual hug.
We can't hug, but we can virtual hug. It's okay.
I want to give this book out for like to everyone I know. I mean, it's
yeah. It is a fantastic book, and I too love Sonny so much. His whole redemption arc. I can't wait to see his story. But I just want to say, this is a global thing. We're all in this together. There's so many people out there. Everybody pretty much going through the same thing. And what would you say to someone who's watching this and is struggling right now?
Don't lose perspective. This is temporary. It feels like, it's a pretty long stretch. It is absolutely a unique situation. But remember that there were good things before, and I promise personally there will be good things after. It may be difficult. It may be trying. It may involve, finding a new normal or adjusting and being flexible. But absolutely, there is a forward. There is a light ahead. There is more to be had. So first and foremost, just never lose that perspective.
Love that. And I would like to add to that, remembering that what you're feeling is completely normal. Remembering to check in with yourself and ask yourself, what do I need right now? What kind of support do I need to get through this? I do think that for many of us, this is our Batman moment. This is our Wonder Woman moment. This is maybe either the beginning or maybe the middle part of our hero's journey. And just like some of your favorite fictional characters, this is that really difficult monster that we're facing, but you're not facing this monster alone. We're all with you. All of us here on the panel and people worldwide, we're facing this monster with you. We're holding your hand virtually from afar, and together we will get through this.
Yeah, I think I'm bringing it to the Harry Potter fandom. I kind of relate this to being under the stairs. We're all under stairs right now. We're all super isolated, and Harry's situation was unique to his character, was where he couldn't tell himself that he wasn't alone. That is that. I mean, living under the stairs, with these tyrants for an aunt and uncle, is kind of a unique situation. But in our case, for me personally, that's what I remind myself on a daily basis. As hard as it gets, I know that there's somebody out there who is going through the same struggle, and if not, having a worse time of it. So I have to remind myself to breathe and remind myself that I'm not alone in this, and that I do have friends, and I'm fortunate enough to have family and friends that are supportive, that are willing to check in on me and make sure that I'm okay, and I'm willing to do the same for them.
Yeah. I would say the most important thing that I've learned is exactly that. Embrace the dark and guard the light. And guarding the light starts with the little things. And this I've also learned from you, Janina, is, it may feel like quicksand. It probably does. It feels like it will take all of your strength to battle the monster that wants to keep you in bed, that wants to keep your eyes closed, that wants to keep you in pain and unproductive and focused on the past. And that's not what we mean by embracing the dark. It's not giving into your depression. It's processing the things that have happened. And so embracing the light can be just getting out of bed and making your bed and not getting back in it. And then you might just feel like brushing your teeth. And then you might just feel like putting on actual clothes, not necessarily pants because we're in a pandemic, but
it's a pants-demic.
Right. But you know, it starts with those little things, and the more little things that you can gather, the more strength you have. And then there's another one, and maybe you'll play a song. Janina told me to dance this week, and I did. And embracing the light, you have to count the little ways, because the little ways will make you feel like having bigger ways. And that may seem insignificant at the time, but it really is the way out of depression and pain and trauma. It's a good start.
No, it's funny that you mentioned that, you know, the choice of making your bed and deciding not to get back in it. It's kind of a it's a thing with the military as well. It's the little progresses, the baby steps, the little victories that you have, and you build upon them, you know, to build that success. Which is why there was this article I read where somebody asked, you know, what's the point in boot camp? Everybody makes your bed. You're just going to mess up your rack and this and that. But it's always the first thing that you do when you get up is to make your bed. And I believe it was a drill instructor of some sort, but he was saying, you know, when the recruits make their bed, that is the first solid accomplishment of the day. And then we build upon that. You know, it's your first literal success of the day. And it doesn't even, and in our case, you know, it doesn't even have to be making your bed. You could skip that step. It could be getting out of bed and making it to brush your teeth, to make yourself that cup of coffee, to move forward in the day. But every little victory builds upon another victory. And before you know it, you've accomplished, you know, a mountain of things, and there's value in that.
Mm-hmm.
And something I really love that you pointed out is you can skip that step. I would like to publicly disclose right now that I never make my bed. I do not seem like I'm not one of those people. I will get back in it. It's cozy and I love it, right? But I think about finding your own rhythm. So whatever that is for you, you know, you don't have to follow any sort of system, like the shoulds, right? What should I do, or what do people do? Sometimes if that's helpful for you, absolutely great, right? But life is kind of a buffet table. Take what helps you and kind of pick and choose what works for you. So if there's a different kind of structure, if there's a different rhythm that works for you, right? If the first thing you want to do when you get out of bed is maybe you just need some time to check your phone, right? And kind of ease into the day. That is okay, especially right now. Maybe the first thing you do, right, is call a friend, just because you know that voice is going to be the one that, like, they make that funny little joke and you're like, oh, okay, cool. This day is not going to suck. Awesome. Then do that. But I love that you made that point, Vince, is whatever works for you.
That's great.
I just want to say that, you know, take the isolation out of social isolation. You know, I'm just so honored right now to have this, you know, availability to be connecting with you guys. I love you guys. I miss your faces and I miss being around you. And that's just it. Reach out to people, connect, keep connecting. We don't have to be isolated. You know, that's all I want to say about that. But we're going to go ahead and end this panel. And I would just hope you guys can just let us know where we can find you on social media or anything else you want to say.
Sure. You can find me on the Los Angeles County Psychological Association board website, and you can also find me through my work in Laguna Hills at Shanti Orange County. So that is shantioc.org.
You can find me at Chase Masterson, and you can find Pop Culture Hero Coalition at Superhero IRL. And you can find our work at popculturehero.org, which is Janina's lesson plans, along with some of the rest of our team, are being adapted for mental health in homes right now. So it's called The Heroic Journey at Home, and check it out at popculturehero.org. Janina, your work it's brilliant.
Thank you so much, Chase. It's always such an honor to work with you. I am always happy to connect. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Shadow Quill on Twitter, or Dr. Janina Scarlet Official on Instagram. So feel free to follow me, say hello. I'm always happy to connect in either of those platforms.
Yeah, and for me, I'm at eggdropramen.studio. That's my website where you can see some of my artwork. I really need to update it with some newer stuff. All my social media is eggdropramen. I'm super active on Instagram as far as posting artwork and interacting with people. And if you follow me on my Facebook page, I'm always shouting out fellow artists, to check out their work and spread the word of all the talent that's out there to support the community.
Right. And again, my name is Dustin McGinnis. You can find me on Twitter at The Valiant Geek. You could also tune into Superhero Therapy Podcast or Harry Potter Therapy Podcast if you're interested. They're a lot of fun, and we have been doing a whole series on the pandemic lately and our favorite, fandoms. But I just want to say, stay safe out there, stay connected, and thank you very much for tuning in.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Much love.
Much love. Guard the light.